Just weeks after our wedding, the man I married was gone, replaced by a stranger haunted by his phone. The daily calls from his mother were stealing him away, one agonizing secret at a time. The low, angry hum of my husband's phone had become the soundtrack to our first month of marriage. It was a constant presence, a third person in our relationship, vibrating on the nightstand while we tried to sleep, buzzing on the kitchen counter while we ate breakfast, and lighting up in his pocket during what were supposed to be our quiet evenings together. Leo had changed. The easy-going, quick-to-laugh man I'd married was gone, replaced by a hollow-eyed stranger with a permanent furrow in his brow and a fuse shorter than a burnt-out matchstick. It all started the day after we got back from our honeymoon. We were floating on a cloud of bliss, unpacking souvenirs and talking about framing our wedding photos. Then his phone rang. I saw the caller ID. Mom. Leo's smile tightened just a fraction before he answered with a cheerful, "Hey, Mom, we just got in." I went back to folding laundry, only half listening. But the tone shifted. His voice lost its warmth, becoming clipped and strained. The conversation lasted 20 minutes, and when he hung up, the cloud of bliss had evaporated. He looked like he'd just run a marathon through a swamp. "Everything okay?" I asked, holding up his favorite sweater. He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah, fine. Mom's just being Mom." But it wasn't fine. After that first call, it was a daily siege, sometimes multiple times a day. He started taking the calls in the other room, shutting the door behind him. I'd hear his muffled, frustrated voice, the pitch rising and falling like a storm at sea. He'd emerge an hour later, drained and irritable, and when I'd ask, the answer was always the same dismissive phrase, "It's nothing," or "just work stuff." But I knew his mom's ringtone. It wasn't work. His mother, Carol, had always been a complicated woman. At our wedding, she had made a great show of welcoming me into the family. During the reception, she pulled me aside and pressed a heavy, antique silver locket into my palm. It was her grandmother's. "This is for you now," she'd whispered, her eyes glittering. "It's for the woman who will carry on our family line." It was a bit intense, but I took it as a gesture of acceptance, a peace offering after years of polite but cool distance. I wore it with pride. Now I suspected that locket was less a gift and more a leash. The change in Leo was terrifying. He stopped sleeping through the night. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. to find him staring at the ceiling, the pale blue light of his phone illuminating the worry etched onto his face. He'd flinch whenever his phone buzzed. He picked fights over nothing, the way I loaded the dishwasher, the TV show I wanted to watch, the fact that I'd left a light on. Each time he'd apologize, afterward, blaming stress from his job, but the apologies felt as hollow as his eyes. Our new home, which was supposed to be our sanctuary, had started to feel like a minefield. I was tiptoeing around his moods, desperate to find the man I had married beneath the layers of anxiety and anger. Tonight was the breaking point. It was exactly 1 month since that first phone call. I'd made his favorite dinner, spaghetti bolognese, and opened a bottle of the red wine we'd discovered on our honeymoon. I was determined to break through to him, to have just one normal, happy evening. He sat at the table, mechanically twirling pasta on his fork, his gaze fixed on the phone sitting face down beside his plate. He hadn't said more than 3 words since he'd gotten home. The silence was deafening, thick with everything we weren't saying. I couldn't take it anymore. I put my fork down, the clatter startlingly loud in the quiet room. "Leo," I said, my voice softer than I intended. "We need to talk. What is going on? What is your mother saying to you every day that is doing this to you?" He didn't look up. He just kept staring at his phone. "It's not about you," he mumbled. "Leave it alone." "How can I leave it alone?" My voice rose with a month's worth of frustration and fear. "It's consuming you. It's consuming us. I'm your wife. You're supposed to be able to talk to me. Just tell me what's happening, Leo. Let me help." That's when he looked at me. His eyes, which I had once compared to a warm summer sky, were now cold, stormy gray. He slowly placed his fork on his plate, the movement deliberate and heavy. His jaw was clenched so tightly a muscle jumped under his skin. I felt a knot of dread tighten in my stomach. This was it. This was the explosion I'd been bracing for. He slammed his hand flat on the table, so hard the plates jumped and wine sloshed in our glasses. The sound echoed in the silent dining room like a gunshot. I flinched back, my heart hammering against my ribs. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated rage, directed entirely at me. He leaned forward, his voice a low, vicious snarl that I had never heard from him before, a voice that turned my blood to ice. "You want to know what's going on?" he hissed, his knuckles white where his hand was pressed to the table. "You want to know what I've been dealing with for 30 days straight? Fine, I support you." The words hung in the air between us, nonsensical and sharp. "I support you." He said it like an accusation, like a curse. I stared at him, my mind reeling, trying to fit the pieces together. Support me in what? My choice of pasta sauce? My career? What did that have to do with the month-long campaign of misery his mother was waging against him? His anger seemed to shatter as quickly as it had erupted. The rigid fury drained from his body, and he collapsed back into his chair, looking utterly defeated. He scrubbed his hands over his face, his shoulders slumping. When he finally looked at me again, the rage was gone, replaced by a raw, bottomless despair that frightened me more than his shouting. "Every day," he said, his voice raspy with exhaustion. "Every single day since we got back from Italy. She calls me, and every single day I have to defend you. I have to defend us. I have to tell her to back off, to leave you alone, to trust my decisions. I have to tell her again and again that I support you, and I'm so tired." A cold dread washed over me. Defend me from what, Leo? What is she saying? He let out a short, bitter laugh that held no humor. What isn't she saying? At first it was subtle, asking if we were settling in, asking if I was happy. Then it got more specific. She wanted to know why you hadn't quit your job yet. She said a wife's place is at home, preparing to start a family. I told her we both have careers we love, and that's how it's going to be. He paused, taking a shaky breath. Then she started on your family, questioning their background, asking if I was sure there weren't any unfortunate genetics I should be aware of. I hung up on her for that one. She called back an hour later, crying, saying she was just worried about her future grandchildren. My blood ran cold. The locket. Carry on our family line. It was all starting to make a horrible kind of sense. It got worse, he continued, his eyes fixed on a crack in the wooden table. Last week she asked if you'd had a full physical recently. If you were, healthy. If everything was in working order. She suggested I make a doctor's appointment for you, a fertility consultation, just to get a baseline. She said it would be irresponsible not to. I felt sick. A wave of nausea and violation washed over me. This woman, who had smiled at our wedding and given me a family heirloom, was discussing my reproductive health with my husband behind my back, treating me like a broodmare she'd just acquired for her son. The privacy of my own body, our future, our plans, it had all been a topic of daily debate without my knowledge. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered, the words catching in my throat. How could I? He finally met my gaze, and I saw the agony in his eyes. How could I tell my brand-new wife that my mother thinks she's defective? How could I ruin our first month of marriage with her poison? I thought I could handle it. I thought I could make her stop. But she doesn't stop. She just finds a new angle, a new fear to whisper in my ear. He reached across the table and took my hand. His was cold and clammy. "I'm sorry, Allie. I'm so sorry I snapped at you. I haven't been angry at you. I've been angry at her, at this whole situation. I've been trying to build a wall around us to keep her out, but she's relentless. And the wall is starting to crumble." Tears welled in my eyes, for him, for me, for the beautiful beginning that had been stolen from us. I squeezed his hand, a current of love and fury coursing through me. "We'll handle her together," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "You don't have to do this alone anymore. Whatever it is, we'll face it together." He gave me a weak, grateful smile, but the shadows in his eyes didn't recede. They deepened. "I wish it were that simple," he said quietly. "There's more. There's a reason for all of this, for the urgency. It's not just her being controlling. It's about my grandfather's will." I frowned, confused. "The will? What does that have to do with anything?" Leo took a deep breath, like a man about to dive into freezing water. "There's a clause, a stipulation for the main family trust. The bulk of my grandfather's estate goes to the first great-grandchild. But there are conditions. And my mother just told me she found a loophole." He let go of my hand and picked up his phone, his thumb hovering over the screen. "She left me a voicemail an hour before I got home tonight. She was triumphant. She said she'd been talking to the family lawyer all day." He looked at me, his expression grim. "She said she's found a way to ensure the inheritance and the family line are secured, with or without you." I felt the blood drain from my face. My husband's phone, which had been a symbol of my exclusion, suddenly became our only life raft in a sea of insanity. He didn't need to ask. I just nodded, my eyes wide with a terrifying kind of focus. He pressed play. Carol's voice filled the room, slick with a chilling sweetness that made my skin crawl. "Leo, darling, I have the most wonderful news. I spoke with Mr. Henderson at the firm all afternoon. He's found a precedent. The trust specifies a direct descendant to secure the inheritance, but there's ambiguity about the mother's role. We have your genetic material cryogenically preserved from before your little accident in college, remember? We can legally engage a surrogate. Someone from a good, vetted family, of course. We can bypass all this uncertainty with Allison and have a child ready to be named as heir within the year. It's the perfect solution. Your grandfather's legacy will be safe, and you won't have to worry about a thing. I'll handle everything. Call me, sweetie." The voicemail ended. The silence that followed was heavier than anything I had ever experienced. A surrogate. My husband's preserved genetic material. Bypass all this uncertainty with Allison. I wasn't a person. I was a variable, an obstacle that could be engineered around. The spaghetti bolognese sat cold and congealed on my plate. I looked at Leo. The defeat in his eyes was gone, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. He was looking at me, waiting for my reaction, ready to follow my lead. He had tried to build a wall to protect me, and it had failed. Now we were going to build a battering ram together. Slowly, I reached up and unclasped the heavy silver locket from around my neck. For a month, it had felt like a weight, a brand. Now it was just a piece of metal. I placed it on the table next to my plate. "Get your coat," I said, my voice eerily calm. "We're going to your mother's house." The drive was silent. Leo just drove, his hands gripping the steering wheel, his jaw set. I didn't touch him. I didn't need to. For the first time in a month, we were perfectly in sync. Two parts of the same weapon aimed at the same target. Carol opened the door with a beaming smile, clearly expecting Leo alone. When she saw me standing beside him, her smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of annoyance. "Allison, what a surprise." "Leo, I was expecting you." "We heard your voicemail," Leo said, his voice flat and devoid of warmth. He stepped aside, letting me walk into her pristine, white-carpeted foyer first. This is a family matter, Carol began, trying to regain control. I am his family now, I cut her off, turning to face her. My heart was pounding, but my voice was steady. And I need you to understand something. You will not talk about my body. You will not plan a future for my husband that does not include me. You are not entitled to our life, our decisions, or our children, born or unborn. Her face hardened, the mask of maternal concern dissolving into pure contempt. This isn't about you, dear. It's about a legacy, something your little middle-class background wouldn't prepare you to understand. That's when Leo stepped forward, placing himself between us. He looked at his mother, but it was like he was seeing a stranger. No, he said, his voice ringing with finality. It was never about the legacy. It was always about your control. You don't care about my happiness. You care about a name in a will. You would rather use a sample from a freezer in a stranger's womb than accept the woman I love. He pulled his keys out of his pocket and placed them on her immaculate entryway table. We're done, Mom. You've made your choice. You chose a dead man's money over your living son. You will have no contact with us. You will not be a part of our life. And if and when Allie and I decide to have children, you will never, ever meet them. Carol's face went white with shock, then red with fury. She opened her mouth to scream, to argue, to threaten, but I held up my hand, silencing her. In my palm was the antique silver locket. I stepped forward and placed it gently on the table next to Leo's keys. I believe this belongs to you, I said softly. It's for the woman who carries on your family line, and that woman is not me. It never will be. We turned and walked out the door, leaving her standing alone in her sterile, silent mansion, with her money and her legacy. As the door clicked shut behind us, I felt a month of tension, fear, and anger release from my shoulders in one long, shuddering breath. In the car, Leo reached over and took my hand. His was warm again. We drove for a while, the streetlights gliding over us before he finally spoke, his voice thick with emotion. I'm so sorry, Allie, for all of it. You have nothing to be sorry for, I said, squeezing his hand. You supported me. He managed a small smile. Yeah, I guess I did. He looked out at the road ahead, a real, genuine lightness returning to his eyes for the first time in weeks. The money doesn't matter. None of it does. We'll figure it out. When we got home, the house felt different. It was quiet, but for the first time since our honeymoon, the silence wasn't deafening. It was peace. Leo's phone lay on the counter, dark and silent. It was no longer a threat. It was just a phone. We stood in the kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of our ruined dinner, and for the first time in a month, we felt like we were finally, truly, home.